this talk. I've written a book on this, and of course, there are many things in the book that we are not going to be able to deal with all of them, but I would like to have a short speech. Of course, you can interrupt me whenever you want. Focus a bit on the why of the book and what on the book. And my idea will be that if I am short enough as I think, we can have then after a dialogue or a debate if anyone is interested. And also, of course, for all this second part, feel free to express everyone in the language that is more common for them. So the first point, why I put myself in this trouble. The first reason is that, as Rosa, my wife, says, because you like it. And in fact, I like the trouble and I like the discussion and I have the debate. So, but of course, this is a very lively issue in our society. My wife and our 3 kids, they work all in education. And this is a particularly lively issue in schools nowadays. But besides discussing that many much, the main reason is that when I witnessed debates around this point, my feeling is that it's a debate where people try to throw each other words rather to understand what they are dealing about. And so, for example, we have been witnessing this thing about boys have a penis, girls have a vulva, as if that was punto redondo, and here stops the discussion. And there is not any interest on going besides that and trying to understand what we are dealing with. And the second point that is very much related to that is that about the role of biology on all these issues. And my feeling is that for many people, biology is a kind of given that is badly used to give closed answers to certain issues. For example, as I said, no, boys have a penis, girls have a vulva, and so nothing else can be discussed. But on the other side, for many people in our society, biology is a matter of fear. So they are still not well accounted with the idea that we as human beings are animals. And as animals, we have a biological nature. And so dealing with the biological nature of as human being is still a bit of, you know, a nuisance. It will be better if we will not have this biological bias that could account for our behavior, for our way of living. So biology, as I said, it puts a bit of fear on the issue. And then here is where I think that we have a kind of responsibility as biologists to precisely put biology on a stage, and put biology on a stage in as much a scientific way as possible, and just to give to the people the different knowledge that is necessary to understand our human nature, which of course is not only biology. So we are a good mixture of biology and culture, and so there are many people. But it's important, in my viewpoint, to distinguish which things are biological and which things are more social. Because when in the story of humanity, things have been mixed, we have been very big disasters. So I think it's important to try to evaluate the different components and how the different components influence each other. And of course, biology was first. Before there was any culture, there was biology. And so in the book, the first thing I did, and perhaps here is not necessary, is try to explain what is sex on biological terms. Because sex, in fact, is just a mechanism to increase diversity. All the rest comes with that. But the reason of sex and its success in evolution is because it is a mechanism to increase diversity. In a sexual reproduction, the only source of diversity are mutations. So mistakes. and that is something that is interesting to keep in mind. We can come to back afterwards. Evolution is possible because there have been molecular mistakes. And so we, as human beings, as animals, are the results of mistakes that have been used by selection to generate success. But at the origin, we are the result of mistakes. So if sex is a mechanism of increased diversity, one of the advantages from the evolutionary viewpoint of sex is that once you have two sexes, that allows for a somehow independent evolution of the success of how the reproduction is achieved by the two sexes. What I mean is that, for example, it's quite common that among males, evolution has improved the ability to do a lot of sexual cells, which are relatively cheap. While in females, basically, evolution has been promoting the existence of oocytes that are cells that are much more rare, much more less abundant, and much more energy consuming. So in fact, from this just very beginning of how sex cells are different, you can imagine that evolution has biased males to have as many as of their cheap sexual cells to be mating, while in the females, this evolution has promoted the success of the fertilized egg, because producing a oocyte is much more cheap and much more expensive energy. So, and this has gone to the extreme in the case of mammals, where females not only produce more rare and more expensive cells, but also for the success of these cells as a human being that will be, as an animal that will be able to reproduce and transmit its genome, it has to go through pregnancy inside the female body. So basically, you can see how the differences in terms of kind of sexual cells has promoted the some kind of strategies that have been more successful in one sex than in the other. What that means, if we look at the animal kingdom, for example, is that what that means is that there are some properties that are more commonly present or more present in degree in males than in females, or just the opposite. There are some behaviors, some properties that are more present or in a major degree in females than in males. And of course, then we go to the animals that we are, to the humans. And that means that there are some properties that from a biological viewpoint are more present in human males than in human females. Also, and that I think is important in terms of behavior, for when human beings accept that humans are animals, there is always the idea that, you know, behavior is what makes us really humans. And this is the space that is more different from the rest of the animals. And this is the space where we would like to have biology perhaps affecting less. And what the biological studies are showing increasingly is that many aspects of behavior are very hardly influenced by biology. And in particular, many aspects of sexual behavior are also affected by biology. So we reach this point, we have some kind of animals that are called humans that have these basic differences. How these differences in sex have to do with gender. So for many people, gender is a unique social construction. And so, and it's true, there is a very important effect of social construction in what genders are. But what cannot be misregarded is that this social construction is based on biological differences. And what genders do is that they took advantage of sexual differences to categorize into different social categories. Sorry for the redundancy. But what is the trick, or what is the problem? Is that properties that in biology are more or less distributed in a kind of Gauss bell. So you have males tend to be more strong than females in the animal kingdom, are transformed into absolute values. And the gender says males are strong and females are not as strong or weak. But not only that, it goes a step further. It says males have to be strong and females have to be less strong. And in a way that Simone de Beauvoir did a very nice observation that it's very obvious, but I think that has to be remembered, is that if a woman does not fit the prototypus of femininity, it's not that the gender is badly defined, it's that this woman is not feminine enough. And so what establishes the worst part of the gender is that not only categorizes, but it establishes prototypes. There is also many times, so there is first, let's summarize, we have sex as a biological difference. The sex is associated with some distribution of some properties. These properties are never an absolute, and the social constructor of the genders transforms these proportional properties into absolute values that become prototypes. And then there are many people that say, okay, I am happy with my prototype that the gender defines. And sometimes this argument is used to defend the validity of genders. No? I don't know why all these feminists are against the role of the woman as a gender. Myself as a woman, I am very happy with this role. Okay, perfect, no problem. What puts into question genders is not the fact that one fits with its prototype, but precisely the person that does not fit with this prototype. And if there is just a minority or even a small part of a population that does not fit with the social role that they are given, it means that the social role has a problem as a prototype. On the other hand, there are some people that say, okay, no, the good thing about social genders is that it reinforces the biological roles of the different sexes. And nowadays, when we have the gender roles that are being put into question, we have less women that have kids, families are not working, because the good thing about the genders is that it would reinforce what is the natural role of females and males. And to that, the big point is that precisely establishing these prototypes, what gender does is kills variability. And one of the more important things for a society is variability. And we as biologists know that when variability is lost, we are less prone to be able to change according to the modifications of our environment. And so one of the points that we have also, in my view, to put into question the established roles of genders is because it kills this internal variability of human societies. So once we have this more kind of general picture, I think that there are many things in our society, in the discussions that we're having, that can be focused in this framework, which allow then for a debate on concepts and not just on throwing each other words to each other. So what I have done in the book is try now to go to many of these issues that are present in our day society and try to see whether this kind of framework can help to understand the issues that are at debate. For example, do we need to deny biological differences to fight against the sexual discrimination of the genders? So there are some positions nowadays that say, okay, if we want to kill the social roles assigned to females, we have to claim that there are not biological differences between males and females. And I think this is completely wrong. But and this is one of the examples where the discussion in a not good framework does not allow for proper conclusions. Another issue, for example, how many genders do we have? How many sexes do we have? From a biological viewpoint, we have only two sexes. If we consider sex as a mechanism to increase variability in reproduction, you can only reproduce as a male, as a female, or not reproduce. But these are the only alternatives in the biological view in the animal kingdom. Many even of the hermaphrodite animals, they reproduce either as a male or as a female. What about genders? We can witness in our society that to account for the diversity of the social roles, we are increasing the putative number of genders in society. And I think this is completely wrong in my view. So we begin to have, all these things, LGBTQ+, that is a never-ending story. And I think that is not focusing on the right kind. Amplifying the number of genders, the only thing that means is amplifying the number of prototypes. And probably what we need is to diffuse the barriers between genders. And so what we need is to disregard the idea that only some prototypes are able to fit the specific role that each individual is playing in society. So in that sense, for example, I will clearly bet for a blurring of the barriers between genders rather than to the multiplicity of genders. Another issue that is very present everywhere, positive discrimination. I have been looking for a word in English for paritat, and I don't know if there is they talk about equality but I don't know. I am much more used to the scientific English, and when I have to explain some of these things in English, sometimes you miss words, no? But okay, we understand each other about paritat, no? So my point is that paritat or equality, as a consequence of a positive discrimination, is a very important tool, because first, there are some people that claim that equality can go against a fair or a just choice of, for example, of better candidates for any case. But the first thing is that any choice has always a connotation, a bias, known or not known. But there is always a bias. And there is this famous experiment with a PhD student apply for a postdoc, and with the same letters of recommendation, the same curriculum, the same letter of intention, it was sent signed as a male or signed as a female. And the ones that were sent signed by a male were much more successful than the ones sent by a female, even among female scientists. So even if we don't know, we as social beings are subject to bias. So the first thing, there is not a pure choice. But the second thing is that quality forces us to look for some features, candidates, qualities in place where we will not usually look for. And in that sense, sometimes precisely increases the fairness of the choice, because it makes us consider candidates or possibilities that we were not considering. But having said so, for me, equality, paritat, is a tool. It's not an objective. When people say, we want to be, no, the objective cannot be equality and parity. The objective has to be a society when everybody can develop their own features and properties, and where their own features and properties will be accepted or recognized irrespective of the gender of the person. And that putting equality as a tool, and probably is a tool that will be required for a very long time, because the society I am depicting is a bit idealistic society. But having put it as a tool, it also makes very necessary to see how to use the tool in each context and in each field. And for example, there are some people that then, some of these male chauvinist reaction. Okay, then I want equality in places where basically there are only working women. Places where there are only working women are usually the less considered places in society. And so the absence of males in these jobs is not a case of discrimination against male, but is a kind of discrimination against women. So to have a lot of males in nurseries, in nursery school, is important precisely to break the discrimination that these jobs have in relation to women. It's not a matter of male discrimination. It's a matter of using male presence in these jobs to go against male discrimination. This is my view. I am saying I tend not to give precise recipes. I try to open questions, but I also commit myself to what I think in that sense. No? Another issue. Why almost all rapists are males? Well, of course, there is a kind of social component here associated with power. But here there is also a biological reason. Once the reproduction become intra-body and internal and not external, in many cases in the animal kingdom, we can see that the role of the female in deciding whether to mate or not to mate is minimal. Many times you have a female that is prepared to be mated, and there are 2 or 3 males that fight amongst them. And it is the male that wins the fight that fecundates the female. So in my view, it's a little bit sad, but we have to know that there can be some biological tendency in some males to have some kind of reproductive association, behavior associated with some kind of aggressivity. And so, as I said, biology can never be an excuse. Biology can be a tool to change things. And so many times I think, for example, in schools, I think that rather than trying to make a speech to the boys saying, oh, you have to be nice, you have to consider that equality and the rights of women, I think we have to be much more direct. You, as males, perhaps sometimes will have tendencies to behave in a non-acceptable way. And the same way that some biological tendencies cannot be accepted in society, the same way that if you are annoyed, you are not allowed to kill the person that annoys you, you have to refrain your tendencies to life in society. But not because this is a kind of ideal thing that you have to, no, it's because you have to control your body. And in fact, you can see that in the sexual crimes are the ones that are less, what is the English word? Less recoverable in terms of social behavior. There is a complete failure of the sexual rapist to be integrated again into society and behave. And I can understand a lot of things I said. I mean, our nervous system is so complex that I can understand, as this was a theater play, there was a guy that was obsessed with fucking cows. Okay, it's his problem. So I can understand a lot of things. But if you have a problem that you are obsessed with kids, you are obsessed with raping, whatever. Nowadays, biology allows you to have a chemical castration. And so if you are not responsible for for your tendencies, you are responsible for how you deal with your tendencies. Again, biology is not an excuse. You are responsible. And nowadays we have the tools of why you behave as you behave. And that is one of the things I use. And again, these things, this feminist claim that contra violació castració, well, I think it has a meaning nowadays. What about, for example, that has a lot of consequence. What about language? What about behavior? We have to learn all that. And we have to learn all that, and we cannot use the principle that it has been like that always. Perhaps we have to keep like that. There is, for example, all this thing about the inclusive language. I don't have a clear position here, but people say, okay, each language has an internal condition that in the case of many Latin languages, the masculine plural includes feminine and masculine. Okay, but no, anybody has a doubt that that was precisely because these languages were built in a society where males were more valuable than females. So we have to go to the reason for the things. And I am not saying that now we have begin to say totis or whatever. I don't know. The only thing I have clear is that we have to find a new way to communicate that has to integrate that. And for me, it's a little bit more difficult because I am a male, but I've heard many women that will tell me that, okay, when we were at the school and the teacher was saying, tots els nens al pati, they didn't know it was who should go, els nens, les nenes, we were included in this one. So we have to advance in trying to find a way in many aspects. For example, we have the tradition of when we meet someone, if a man meets a woman, perhaps tends to kiss her. Not between men in our society. In other societies, they do. And I have to confess that many times now, I don't know if I put my hand and they don't give my hand. Well, we have to go through all that. And we have to find a way, which I hope in a natural way, we'll find a way to do so. But we cannot take the argument that it has always been like that, just to keep doing what we have always been doing. Because what we have always been doing responds to a certain social roles, gender social roles. And to finish, one of the things in the book, I will not go for more and just to have an open thing. One of the things I wanted also to analyze is the issue of transgender and transsex in society, because this is precisely something that is happening very much in schools, and so I have been discussing. And so the first point is when a boy says, "Mom," because usually it tells that to the mother, not to the father. "Mom, I want to be a girl," or a girl says, "Mom, I want to be a boy." What is he saying? Is he saying, "I want to be a boy," or "I would like to do what boys do in our society without any problem"? And so here is a very different issue, because in one case, what he puts into question is the social roles. What in the other he puts into question is his sexual identity. And my feeling is that if we are able to blur the differences between the social roles of genders, many of the transsexual cases we will find will be solved, because in fact are transgender issues. So many boys and girls that find themselves in a better condition, having long hair, wearing pink, playing football, playing with dolls, and not being established already in the roles that they are assigned. Take into account that many of the social focusing of kids versus boy or girl is much previous that the boy or the girl develops the issue, the behavior that are more often associated with boys and girls. So before everything happens, boys are blue and girls are pink. And it's true that many times, as I said, there is this kind of self-reinforcement of the sexual properties with social roles. But again, the problem is how much variability we are losing in this focusing, but also how many cases we are generating of disgrace of people that do not accept this. Having said so, it's true that from the original sexual mechanism of reproduction, many things have evolved. And particularly as the evolution goes in animal kingdom, sexual, let's say, determination has a lot of things involved. Sexual chromosomes, hormones, nervous system, many of these things. And here, I think we are a little bit biased. I think in biology, the idea that biology works as machines has done a lot of damage, because machines are made for a purpose. And the biology entities are the result of just taking advantage of things that were there or that have appeared. So I like very much more the idea of François Jacob of the bricolage. Biology is more bricolage than design. And so in this bricolage, I can imagine many ways in which the sexual identity of the nervous system can perhaps not fit the sexual hormonal component or the X chromosome or Y chromosome mutations. And so it can be, in fact, many people that have sexually different inputs in how their identity is established. And for me, these are the real people that can be transsexual in that sense. But again, I make a big difference between transsexual and transgender, because a transgender does not put into questions the genders. Basically, what he says is that he's in the wrong genders, but that genders are okay. And I think in that case, it's much more important to say, okay, no, it's not that you do not belong to the right gender. It's that the gender as a way to put you into society is not right. It's perfect. If you want to be a transgender, there is no problem. But the objective, again, is not to reassign people to new categories, but to blur these categories. In fact, for example, going to the trans sex, there is this idea of that we well know here in this audience, but not from out from here. No, male hormones and female hormones. Both male and female have both in different proportions, and there is not something that's saying this is black and this is white. As many cases in biology, we have a gradation. And so even in terms of hormones, it does not make sense to say, till this point here, you are pure male, and from point here, you are pure female. Okay, if it's fine with you, I will stop here. I just try to explain why I put myself into this mess, and just how this has many, many consequences in many aspects in our life. And if we want to understand each other, and we want to make some sense of the debate that we have, I think we have to have the proper tools, and particularly we as biologists have the responsibility to try to put biology, as I said, as a tool in this debate. Biology needs not to be a tool for discrimination. It can be a tool precisely for equality. And I think that we are in the position to foster this debate. Thanks.